Welcome to the Steyr Flooring Laboratories, and today we have an experiment that, oh man, it's mind-blowing just to think what I'm gonna try to do in here, or what I am gonna do, and we're gonna see what happens. But we are gonna see if you can seal carpet edges with this, the 220 glue gun, the glue sticks. I'm actually gonna use it in just a regular, this will be the Trax seam sealing glue gun that I'm going to use with the glue, or the tip on it, the special tip for seam sealing. And I normally use these glue tips right here, right? The ones that are made, the no hinge, the ones that are actually made for the glue gun and for sealing seams. These I used, for tack strip on concrete. I've also used them. I use them a lot for upholstery work. Why? These darn things are super aggressive. Like the tack in them, man, you'll stick this to plywood and go to tear it out. It'll tear plywood out. That's how aggressive it is. So why would you want to use that to seal a seam? Well, if we can get that to work, wouldn't you think that would, like, in theory, in my head, I'm thinking, man, that is going to hold that seam together and possibly just maybe take away all the seam peaking. I don't know. Again, that's what we're here to find out. So one thing on the 220, it does say right here, operating temperature, 365 degrees to 392 degrees. I'm going to use the Oricon XU90. I also have my little, I don't know what the heck it's called, but I can take the temperature, little laser temperature thingy, and I'm going to try to get those irons down cool enough to where maybe they're not going to be at that, if I can get them down below 365 degrees. And we're going to see if that's even going to reactivate that thermoplastic sealer. So stay tuned. All right, one thing to note here is the extended time glue sticks, the ones that that you can use for sticking down tack strip. They do not have any tracer in them. So, I'm not going to recommend using them by any means. I'm just here to find out, will it work? Will they reactivate? That's what I want to know. But I want you guys to be aware of that there is no UV tracer in that glue stick. So here's the little laser I'm going to use, showing the ground about 65 degrees where we're putting the seam together. So that's about right. The thermometer over there is saying 63 degrees, so we're really close. So I'm going to try to get those irons. I'm going to see which one I can get right below that like 300 to 350. See if we can get them down there. During the process of me putting these seams together, I wanted to make it as on the job as possible. So I had my seam board, ran my seam iron, used the seam weight, and then the seamer down now. And this is how I would do it on a job site. So again, I wanted to make it just as much like I was out in the field working as possible in here to get the best results possible. I just want to note a couple things here. Got two seams put together. That was with the Taylor iron. That was with the crane. Both of these are done with the traditional thermoplastic sealer. The temperature, I got the bottom of the crane, or the Taylor, when I went to start, it was 320. The temperature on the crane was 290. I was also taking the temperature of the adhesive on the Taylor, and that was around 180 degrees. Right when I pulled the iron away, I would zap it quick, and at 180. And this was about 165, 170, just kind of varied. I checked that one a couple times. So relatively close when you're talking hundreds of degrees there. So now we're going to put the two seams together with the, which I call the more aggressive sealer, but it doesn't have the UV tracer. And it also says operating temperature of 365 degrees. So we're going to see if we can get that to reactivate. the struggles are real. Unfortunately, when you are the producer, director, actor, everything, sometimes you forget to do shit, like turn the camera on. But this, we got these seams put together. These are with the extended open time glue sticks, the ones, like I was saying at the beginning of the video, that I believe they're just a stickier, tackier glue, and it's reflected in the price too, right? I mean, they're pretty expensive. So now it's time to let these cool down, and we're gonna dissect these seams, take them apart, and just see if there's any noticeable difference between the two. Temperature-wise, everything was about the same. I'm gonna say like 315 was the iron, right around that 300, 290. I wrote it on there, I'll have to double check. Same thing when I'd pull the iron forward. I believe they were all around 160, 180 degrees underneath there. So anyways, we're gonna let this cool off, dissect, and dig into it more. All right, guys, so let's get to it. Let's find out what happened here. We're gonna start off with the first seam we made. This was with the Taylor iron, and it was just a regular seam sealer, the thermoplastic seam sealer, and the iron was at about 320 is what it was saying. And what's cool is it kind of shows it on the back. With that Oricon XU90, can you see any of that? I mean, again, I'm here by myself, but you can see a couple spots where it got hot. I also got this going on here, guys. I had too much tape at the top. Well, not too much. I wanted to actually load up the iron with some glue to start it. And then when I went to try to pull my board, everything was sticking and it kind of pulled everything apart. So, I think first thing I'm going to do is just kind of deconstruct where I started it. Well, actually, first thing I'm going to do is where I'm going to check for seam peaking. I'm going to come into the middle of it. Why? Because, guys, that's going to be the strongest spot. It's not going to be the strongest here at the end. Just the nature of a seam. But let's pull this apart. So at 320. See where it's stuck to those yarns there. It's just going to start pulling on those. So I'm going to cut this back. Oh man, this is what I love about this tape, guys. I really, really like the XU90. It's so sticky. And at 320 degrees, it's probably really sticky. Man, I can't get it. I literally can't. And I want to, because I want it to kind of pull some of that backing apart. It's not going to. Well, let's come right here, make another cut. What we'll do is the old the hinge test. We'll fold our seam over. Let's get the actual seam. So there's my seam. Stuck together. Good, good, good. Let's just break it apart now. I'll show you guys what's going on in there. You know, obviously it was working. You can see the sealer. Hopefully on the camera you can see the sealer on the seam edges. We just checked to see if we got hinging here on the where I started my seam. So if you guys aren't using thermoplastic yet to seal, I strongly recommend it. This is what's so awesome. Here, look at this. This is what you like to see right here, guys. See how it's just pulling each side together. I'm gonna give that an A+. So that was with the Taylor iron, 320 degrees. Just the regular, the power hold glue sticks for seam sealing. Now we're gonna go over to the crane. This one was at 290. And it shows on the back, you don't see any of that burn through. And again, this one was like, I think this was the one that was like 160 degrees. It was showing me the glue was right behind it, but seam looks good from the back. Do you guys do that? Like, I like to tap a seam. Like, you just flick it, and it just has a, if you can define what tight the definition of it sounds like, snap a seam. That's just what it is to me. So I'm going to cut, again, I'm going to come to the middle. I'm going to cut apart my seam, because this is where I want to, this is the best place to check for that hinge, because the front, beginning and the end of a seam is just always the weakest. That's just the nature of it. So I'm going to try, this one I want to get it so I can pull some of that back, and I really want to show you what's cool about this seam tape. Low melt. And I'm not an expert with it. I'm not sponsored by it or anything. I just use it because I like it. It's sticky. I love that radiant heat, but man, when you're underneath it and that thing kicks on, whoo, she's hot. So I'm getting one side to come up here. That's kind of a good thing. It's pulling the seam. You can see this here, guys. It's just murdering that seam there. So it's telling me my sealer is doing what it's supposed to do. Now I think this is my piece we want to check for the hinging. Make sure I got the right come together. And I'm not putting a ton of pressure here to hold this. I mean, again, I'm sitting underneath some radiant heat. It's softened this carpet up a little bit. But you can see it's, my piece. See that, guys? What you want it to do. Let's break it open. I like the way this one looks. You guys can see. Just see all this kind of snakiness going on here. That's my seam weld. It's just stretching and pulling those backings apart. And that's what helps with the, look at how I put that back and just can't even tell, right? So that's what helps with that seam peaking. All right, so now we're on to, this is the extended open time adhesive. It's the power hold one. The Taylor, this one was reading 320. Show you the back of the seam here. Looks pretty good. Here's where looks like my seam board maybe got a little twisted or something, and it kind of pulled on it. But you can see, you definitely see a little bit, like I said, with that 320, you can see where it's just starting to maybe get a little too hot on that seam tape. I wouldn't want to leave it there any longer. And again, I like to do my tight test. It just feels tight. Woo! Let's cut out the middle. And this is a 7/16, 7-pound cushion. I think we put the seam on. I did use a seam board. Let's see if we can pull this guy apart. So, I mean, this is just doing what you would exactly want it to do. Look at that. Look where it's welded together. Look how it's just pulling it. I mean, it just literally that's become stronger than the glue on the backing itself, is where that seam is made, constructed. We'll do our hinge test. You can see that there. And this is just an observation. I'm pulling this harder, and it's just not coming apart as easy. But it's still, that could just be mentally too, like I'm telling myself, well, the glue costs more, it's stickier, it's supposed to be better. But you can see it did the same thing. So we did get, reactivation here. Look how here's a great one. You can see that. See how this row here just got pulled off of the carpet. It's actually the seam. Okay, guys, so this is not the seam here. The seam is actually over on this side, but it's locked in so tight that it actually pulled that apart. So that's telling you again that that sealer is making that seam, that's becoming the strongest point on the back of that carpet. All right. Last but not least, this was the crane. Love the way it looks. This was a little bit warmer. 310 was what I had the iron set at. Little cutter. I don't know why I don't cut from the back. It's always easier to cut from the back. Well, I was cutting. Okay. I haven't showed this yet. Let's just, I don't know if this will even show anything. There's this, okay. There's the seam. But you can just see how flat and tight that tape is. That's what I was talking about, that tight, that sound. Like the tape is just, it's the profile of it is just like sucked into that vacuum. Good thing, you know, especially if you've got a low, dense carpet, that profiling of that tape, that can show. So let's go ahead and take this apart. Man, I think I cut too much off. You know what? Let's take this one apart from the, this is the back of the seam. I wish I could, because I like it when it pulls, when you get it that good where it just, I mean, this is good. Here we go. It's sticking good. I always like when it kind of pulls and then just rips the backing, that secondary backing off, and I always think that's kind of neat. How does that equate to real life? No clue. No clue how that's, because does your seam need to be that strong? Heck no. You're not using it as a tow rope. I'm gonna keep, because this has got something kind of cool going on here I want to show you. If I can get that off. Oh. Yep, I'm done with that, because you can just start to pull out. You can see, you know, we got plenty of adhesive up in there. We're pulling yarns through. Let me grab my roll pencil here. I'm gonna hold it. There we go. Hopefully you guys can see. So here's actually, you know, I'm pulling the seam apart there, but there's the actual seam, and you can just, with that sealer, it's just welding it. It's holding it together right now. You know, if I yank it, I'll rip it apart. But another just good thing about the thermoplastic sealer, I use it on everything. I really do. Commercial glue down, I don't do a lot of it, but when we do, yeah, I use a Sullivan based. There's one from Powerhold I really like. I don't know the name of it right now. So here we go. There's our seam, doing what it's supposed to do. Like I said, in my head, it feels like it maybe pulls apart a little bit harder. I don't know if that's true or not. But like I said, I think mentally I just want it to be. But again, this one really, maybe it really shows what it's supposed to do. You guys see that white line, how it just kind of goes from one side to the other, that white row? That's the seam. It's so locked in there, it's jumping over to that other side of that, and it's pulling that apart. That's really, I mean, that's really awesome here. I'm gonna see if I can kind of pull. And you can just see how well everything's just bonded together in there. So like again, like how, you know, how does that equate to, you know, when we go to stretch this, hold tight. Not a great example here. This is not a power stretcher, but it is a handy little tool. I'm gonna put that down. This is just gonna pull. See how it's You guys see that? There's my seam. Just getting cranked on both ways. And that thing ain't coming apart. You know, ideally what I should do, that's what I'm making another video. That's an idea. Ruben, if you're watching this, is an idea for you too. Put a seam together, let's use our kneeless and just crank that thing. I'm willing to bet your seam, my seam, whoever's seam it is, if done correctly, it's gonna rip out here. It ain't gonna rip on that seam. So anyways, I'm gonna end it with that. But again, this is another reason why you should use thermoplastic adhesive to seal your seams. Conclusion, is this sealer better than the glue sticks? I can't make any. Will it work? Yes, yes it will. It will definitely work. Now, I would recommend using the actual sticks that are designed for it because they have the tracer in it, so if there ever was an issue. But here, just a great example. See that black line? That's backing. That's not the seam. The seam is right here. Comes around, and it comes back. I mean, you can just see, this is like the only spot where I got my seam to pull apart was right there. And even that, guys, if you can see that, just look at how it's just got so much backing and what is that, polypropylene fibers from the backing just stuck together. Here's another spot where the seam did open up. So this is this out of all of them, this one did the best as far as pulling the row next to it apart. The other ones are still fine though. I mean, they really were. I mean, right there, you can just see it opened up again, but you can just see it's just all mashed up with glue and backing. So I appreciate you guys watching. I know it was a little lengthy video, but I think that's a lot of good information. I think manufacturers, anybody in the manufacturing that's watching this, I think it'd be a great idea for you guys to take your products, take them out, work with them, and do a deconstruction video on why, you know, we need to, you know, for one, follow directions, right? And best procedures to use your product on how it's going to work the best. You know, unfortunately, not everything's best case scenario when we're working. I'm in the Midwest, and guess what? We're going to get some days here where it's going to be 20 below, and I got to go to work, and I'm going to have to lay carpet. And no matter what I do, I'm not going to be able to keep those walls in the house as warm as the middle of the house. But that's why we're professionals. We figure that out, and we solve that problem. So thanks again for watching, guys. Have a great weekend, whenever you watch this. See ya. Hey, one thing I want to end on is I think this is something all installers, all of you guys out there installing carpet, I think this is a great thing for you to do is get a piece of carpet, and if you're not sealing seams, start sealing seams. This is a great way to practice doing this. And figure out what's going to work the best for you doing it or sealing your seam, putting your seam together, make the best seam, deconstruct your seam. Why? Because that's the only way you're going to probably find out if you are doing something wrong or incorrectly. You can learn a lot from taking something apart. I mean, you really can. And this is how I learned how to use the thermoplastic seam sealing, because going out, watching a video on how to do it and then going to a job site and doing it, I don't know that's a great practice. I understand that, unfortunately, in our trade, that's how a lot of things are learned. But this is something that can be done in a basement. If you live in an apartment, clean your living room up. You're not going to hurt anything. Roll a piece of cushion out, get a board, put some seams together, and take them apart. Figure out what works. Because guess what? Every tape, it's got a different melting point. It's got all that fancy stuff. I don't even know how to address it. But they all work different. And not one tape, not one adhesive is going to fit the shoe. I will say, I'm going to do a little touting here, but the Oricon XU90 seems to, for me, work on just about everything. Other than, the Cool Glide, that stuff sticks to anything. But I still like putting seams together with a conventional seam iron. So I appreciate you guys again for watching this video. You know, have a great one again, and we'll catch you on the next one. Bye-bye.